The echo died, and Michael's hand shot up, but the sound guy wasn't looking. 3 hours until showtime, and nobody expected the youngest one to speak first. 2 minutes earlier, the arena had been chaos. Cables snaked across the stage, equipment hummed, and Jackie was running through the opening number when Michael stepped off his mark. He walked straight toward the control area at stage left. The band kept playing. Nobody noticed. Not yet. The sound guy, a man named Frank, hired that morning because the regular guy called in sick, was adjusting knobs with one hand and holding a clipboard with the other. He'd worked 200 shows, maybe more, and none of them involved a kid telling him how to do his job. When Michael tapped his shoulder, Frank barely turned. "The speaker's not right," Michael said. Frank glanced at his equipment. Everything looked fine. "It's on, kid. Go back to your spot." "It's on," Michael said, his voice calm but insistent. "But I can't hear what I need to hear." That's when Jackie stopped singing. The drums stuttered to silence. One by one, every instrument dropped away until the only sound left was a low hum. Jermaine walked over. Tito set down his guitar. Marlon crossed his arms. And Frank finally looked at Michael, not past him, but at him. "What do you mean?" Michael didn't hesitate. "I can't hear my own voice. Jackie's too loud on my left, the drums are behind me, but I'm buried under everything else. I need to hear myself first, Jackie off to the side, and the bass quieter." Frank blinked. The kid was 10, maybe 11. Frank had worked with famous singers who couldn't explain what they needed, professionals who just said louder or softer without understanding why. And here was this child describing exactly what was wrong, like he'd been doing this for years. For a second, Frank thought maybe one of the older brothers had coached him, but Michael's face didn't move. His eyes stayed steady, and there was no attitude, just certainty. "You're telling me you need everything adjusted," Frank said slowly. "I'm telling you I need to hear what I'm singing," Michael said. "If I can't hear it, I can't control it. And if I can't control it, the whole show falls apart." The brothers exchanged looks. Nobody spoke. Jackie shifted his weight, watching Michael with an expression that sat somewhere between respect and surprise. They'd all felt it during practice. Something was off. But Michael was the first one to stop everything and say it out loud. That took something most 10-year-olds didn't have. Confidence, maybe. Or just a deep instinct that performance wasn't about looking good, it was about getting it right. Frank turned back to his controls, and for the first time all day, he actually listened. He made adjustments, testing each change. The bass was too loud, drowning everything out. Michael's voice sat so low it practically disappeared. Frank had said it that way, assuming the kid would want to hide behind the band the way most young performers did. He hadn't considered that Michael wasn't trying to hide. He was trying to lead. "All right," Frank said. He lowered the bass, brought Michael's voice forward, and shifted Jackie's sound to one side. "Try that." Michael walked back to his mark. He rolled his shoulders once, shook out his hands, and nodded to the drummer. The band started again, and within 4 bars, everyone knew something had changed. Michael's voice commanded the room, every note clear, every breath controlled, every phrase landing exactly where it needed to be. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't fighting anything. He was in control. Jermaine caught Tito's eye and raised his eyebrows. Marlon stopped mid-step and let the rhythm carry him differently. Even Jackie, who'd been the lead on most tracks before Michael stepped up, leaned back and let his brother take the space. The difference wasn't just technical. It was presence. Michael had needed the sound fixed so he could do what he'd come here to do, and now that it was fixed, no one could look away. Frank stood there, one hand still on the controls, and for the first time in 15 years, He felt like he'd just been taught his own job. Practice ended, but the brothers stayed on stage. Jackie walked over to Michael and rested a hand on his shoulder. No words, just a silent acknowledgement. Marlon grinned. Tito nodded. Jermaine adjusted his bass strap and said, "Now we can actually hear what we're doing." They'd all felt the difference. The room had opened up. The sound had space. And Michael, who rarely asked for anything, had asked for exactly what they all needed. But here's the part you can't miss. What happened after they left the stage? The show that night was in a mid-sized venue in the Midwest, the kind with worn-out seats and walls that swallowed sound. The Jackson 5 had played worse places, but this one had a reputation. The equipment was old, the room was difficult, and the crowd pressed close to the stage. Frank had warned the stage manager that if anything went wrong, they'd have maybe 30 seconds to fix it. The stage manager just shrugged. "Kids are pros. They'll handle it." Michael didn't know any of that. He just knew practice had worked, and he trusted it would hold. 15 minutes before showtime, Frank's headset crackled. Another crew member was calling from the back. "We've got a problem," the voice said. "Michael's speaker is cutting in and out. Might be a bad wire." Frank's stomach dropped. That was Michael's speaker. The one right in front of him, the one they'd spent 20 minutes getting right. If it died during the show, the kid would be performing blind. No guide, no support, nothing but the roar of the crowd. And that wasn't enough when you were trying to stay in sync with 4 other people in front of 2,000 screaming fans. Frank looked at the clock. 12 minutes, not enough time to fix it properly. He made a decision. He'd send Michael's sound through Jackie's speaker, too. If the main one died, Michael would still hear something. It wouldn't be perfect. The balance would be off. But it would keep him from going completely silent. Frank's hands moved fast. The house lights dimmed, the crowd erupted, and the stage manager's voice came through. "Places, 30 seconds." The band took the stage in darkness. The opening chord hit, lights exploding across the stage, purple and gold and white. The crowd screamed. Michael stepped to the center, grabbed the mic, and sang the first line. And then, silence. Michael's speaker cut out. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone. But Michael didn't stop, he didn't flinch, because Frank's backup kicked in half a second later. The sound was different, coming from the wrong direction, but it was there. And Michael adjusted instantly. He leaned left, angling toward the working speaker. He used Jackie's live voice as his guide. He shifted his weight, controlled his breathing, and kept the performance moving like nothing had happened. Frank watched from his station. He saw Michael's head tilt slightly toward Jackie's speaker, saw his posture shift. The kid was solving a problem most adults wouldn't even notice, and doing it while spinning, sliding, and hitting every vocal cue without a single crack in his delivery. The audience never knew. The brothers never knew. Only Frank, standing at his station with sweat running down his back, knew how close they'd come to disaster. And that's when Frank understood. Michael had built everything around that sound. Every breath timed to what he heard. Every movement synced to the rhythm. Take it away, and most performers would fall apart. But Michael had adapted in real time, found a new way forward in the middle of chaos, and kept going. After the show, Frank found Michael backstage, sitting on an equipment case with a towel around his neck. The kid was exhausted, voice rough, shirt soaked, breathing still heavy. His brothers had already disappeared to the dressing room, but Michael stayed. He always stayed. Something about the quiet after a show, the hum of equipment winding down, the echo of the crowd fading, seemed to settle him. When Frank walked up, Michael smiled. Not a performance smile, just a small, tired, genuine one. "The speaker cut out, didn't it?" Michael said. Frank stopped. "How did you know?" "I felt it disappear," Michael said. "Just for a second, like the ground dropped out. Then it came back, but different. The sound was coming from the left instead of straight ahead. You sent it through Jackie's speaker, didn't you?" Frank laughed, not because it was funny, but because he didn't know what else to do. The kid had noticed a split-second problem in the middle of a screaming arena, figured out the solution, and kept performing at full power. All while dancing, singing lead, and staying in perfect sync with 4 other people. "Yeah," Frank said. "I sent it through Jackie's." "Thank you," Michael said. And then, after a pause, "Next time, can you send it through 2 backup speakers, just in case? That way, if one goes down, I've still got sound coming from 2 directions." Frank promised he would. And from that night on, every sound crew who worked a Jackson 5 show made sure Michael had multiple backups. Not because Michael demanded it, but because once you saw what he could do when everything worked right, you'd do anything to make sure he never lost it. Frank walked back to his station that night feeling different. He'd started the day thinking he was doing a job, setting up equipment for some kid group from Indiana. He ended it knowing he'd watched something rare. A performer who understood the machinery of performance, who treated every crew member with the same respect he gave the audience, and who never stopped thinking about how to make it better. Years later, long after the Jackson 5 had become a memory, and Michael had stepped into a solo career that redefined what a performer could be, he was asked in an interview about those early days. The interviewer expected stories about the crowds, the hits, the fame. But Michael didn't talk about any of that. He talked about the sound, about how getting it right could make you feel like you were floating, and getting it wrong could make you feel like you were drowning. He said the sound in your ear was the only honest thing on stage. It didn't lie, didn't hide mistakes. It just told you the truth. Frank never forgot that practice session. He told the story to every young crew member he trained over the next 30 years, and he always ended it the same way. "I've worked with legends. I've worked with divas. I've worked with people who had no idea what they needed, but I've never worked with anyone who knew exactly what they needed before they needed it." That was Michael, 10 years old, and he was already in charge. Not by yelling, not by demanding, just by knowing. The venue that night is gone now, torn down and replaced with a parking lot. The equipment is in a landfill somewhere, but the recording from that show still exists, buried in a vault in California, and if you listen close, really close, you can hear it. The moment when everything clicked, when the sound was right, and the performance became something more than just a show. It became proof that if you know what you need and you're brave enough to ask for it, and you're smart enough to adapt when things go wrong, you can change the whole room. One look, one request, one adjustment. And the difference was everything.